Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that, let's be honest, usually gets a pretty bad rap in the fast-paced world of kitchens and catering. Yep, we're talking about paperwork. It is so easy to look at administrative controls, checklists, and daily logs as nothing more than bureaucratic red tape, right? Just another annoying hurdle slowing you down during a busy shift. But the reality, at least according to official food safety guidelines, is entirely different. Today, we're going to reframe exactly how we look at documentation. It's not just red tape. Think of it as a vital paper shield. It's literally the primary administrative system protecting your business from legal liabilities and, much more importantly, protecting public health from very real microscopic threats. I want to start off by throwing a rhetorical question your way. If a food safety measure isn't logged, did it actually happen? Think about it. You might have the absolute cleanest kitchen in the city. You might have scrubbed every single counter and checked every single temperature. But you have to remember that in the eyes of a municipal health inspector, an unrecorded action is an invisible action. Without that written proof, you simply cannot demonstrate compliance. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the food safety framework. Second, who is actually responsible? Third, the power of paperwork. And finally, fixing failures with CAPA. Section 1, the food safety framework. So before we get bogged down in the granular details of daily audit logs, we really need to understand the overarching scientific framework that makes these administrative controls necessary in the first place. The official Ministry of Public Health definition is incredibly clear on this. Safe food is defined as food that is entirely free from all types of biological, chemical, or physical hazards. But notice what's totally missing from that definition? Prestige. Achieving safe food has absolutely nothing to do with whether you're running a 5-star luxury hotel banquet or a humble street cart. Safety relies entirely on active risk controls. It's all about the specific actions you take and document day in and day out. To actually implement those active risk controls, well, we need to know exactly what we're defending against, right? The Food Safety Code is designed to neutralize 3 main hazards at every single stage of the food chain. First up, you have physical hazards. These are foreign materials that sneak in during preparation or farming. We're talking glass, hair, or, pests. Second, biological hazards. This is essentially microscopic warfare, the pathogens and viruses that cause foodborne illnesses. Third, chemical hazards, things like pesticide residue or improper contact with heavy-duty cleaning compounds. And then there's a really crucial fourth category, allergen hazards. The guidelines treat these with utmost severity. They require explicit, strict communication with the consumer to prevent life-threatening allergic reactions. Now, all of these operational rules don't just come out of thin air. They come directly from the official Food Safety Code of Practice for food services. It is a massive, comprehensive regulatory document, but what's vital to understand here is that none of it is arbitrary. Every single administrative rule inside it, every tiny log you're asked to fill out, is backed directly by verified scientific research. A perfect example of that scientific backing is temperature control. We all know the dreaded danger zone, that span between 5 degrees and 65 degrees Celsius. In this specific range, foodborne bacteria just multiply like wildfire. By contrast, maintaining a freezing standard of -18 degrees Celsius completely halts microbial growth. And this right here is exactly why chilling and freezing temperature logs are absolutely non-negotiable during an audit. They are the written evidence that you are actively manipulating the environment to stop bacterial multiplication. But of course, not all ingredients are created equal. The framework requires staff to adjust their level of administrative care based on the specific risk category of the food they're handling. High-risk foods like meat, eggs, and milk products, they easily support bacterial growth and demand incredibly strict, continuous temperature controls and documentation. On the flip side, low-risk foods like dry rice and edible oils, well, they're shelf-stable ambient products. You still absolutely need to track their expiration and storage, but the level of granular daily monitoring shifts appropriately based on the science. Section 2. Who is actually responsible? So the crucial point here is figuring out who ensures all this science is actually applied. Food safety is absolutely a collective obligation. The ecosystem of responsibility breaks down really clearly. At the very top, you have the MOPH inspector. Their role is pure oversight. They enforce compliance, offer guidance, and log violations to protect the public. Then you have the owner, who has to provide the proper facility design, the equipment, and the training to ensure compliance with the law. But the real day-to-day execution, that happens at the next 2 levels.
The person in charge, or PIC, is your hygiene supervisor on the ground. They monitor daily operations, verify the logs, and manage the audits. Finally, the food handler must strictly follow those established procedures and obey all directives given by the PIC. I really want to pause on this quote, which comes straight from the guidelines, because the stakes here are just immense. In the event of a food poisoning outbreak, the PIC and the handlers are held directly responsible. Let that sink in for a second. It is not just about getting a bad review online. It is direct, legal, and ethical accountability resting squarely on the shoulders of the kitchen staff.
When you're just reading administrative text, I know it can feel pretty dry, but you have to ground these regulations in reality. We're talking about real people working in high-pressure, fast-moving environments, handling high-risk materials. The regulations and the paperwork, they exist to guide these food handlers safely through the total chaos of a busy service.
Section 3. The power of paperwork.
So let's shift now from the macro regulations down to the micro, granular, everyday practice. We go right back to that core philosophy. An unrecorded action is an invisible action. When you are filling out a log, you aren't just doing some mindless chore. That documentation is your tangible proof of compliance. It's the visible evidence you hand over to an inspector to prove that you are actively protecting your customers from invisible biological threats. The paper trail is your shield.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the guidelines apply intense administrative rigor to even the most mundane operational tasks. Take cleaning a grease trap, for example. The physical act of cleaning it is pretty straightforward, but the administrative trail requires highly structured, multi-step documentation. A fully compliant log needs the exact date and the established frequency. It needs the method of cleaning, like was it internal staff or an external professional. It requires service details, meaning actual third-party receipts have to be physically attached to the log. You have to record specific observations like leaks or slow drainage. And crucially, it requires dual accountability. You need the signature of the person who cleaned it right alongside the signature of the PIC, verifying that it actually meets safety standards.
And this level of strictness, it applies across the board, particularly during the mandatory pre-shift and post-shift log audits conducted by the PIC. The rules explicitly state every required entry parameter must be completely filled out on time. Blank spaces are considered a compliance failure. You can't just draw a squiggly line down a checklist and call it a day. Missing data isn't viewed as a simple oversight. It is treated as a severe vulnerability by auditors because to them, it represents a very real gap in your active risk control.
Section 4. Fixing failures with COPPA.
Let's logically sequence how this builds, because the reality is that kitchens are very human environments. Errors happen, for sure. Equipment breaks down, water filters get dirty, or a supplier forgets a food grade certificate. What the authorities actually care about isn't that you are 100% perfect all the time. It's how management responds to that imperfection. And that brings us to CAPA, or Corrective and Preventative Action. This is the ultimate administrative tool for continuous improvement. When an inspector finds a non-compliance issue, you don't just say, oops, we fixed it. You have to follow a structured framework. First, you identify the root cause. Why did this actually happen? Second, you implement a corrective action. Third, you determine a verification method to ensure the fix actually worked. And fourth, you provide evidence of implementation. This structured sequence ensures problems are solved permanently, not just Band-Aid for the afternoon. Ultimately, this is the core takeaway of the entire food safety code of practice. True compliance shifts the focus away from temporary quick fixes and moves it toward permanent management systems. Administrative controls, the logs, the audits, the CAPA reports, they are exactly what builds a resilient system. A system that survives staff turnover, survives a crazy busy Friday night rush, and survives the inevitable daily chaos of the food industry. So I want to leave you with a final thought to really challenge how you view your own daily audit readiness. If your kitchen is visually spotless, but your compliance logs are completely blank, are you actually safe? Without that paper shield, you have zero proof of the controls protecting your customers. Remember, documentation isn't the enemy of a fast-paced kitchen. It is the very foundation that allows it to operate safely in the first place. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.